for a watch party of Mary, the Netflix movie. So here with us is Audrey, Father Gerard, and of course our colleague Richard. So stay with us. We'll be back sharing with you more about this Netflix movie. See ya!
This is CatholicSG Radio, dear sisters and brothers, and welcome to Off the Pulpit. Now, Off the Pulpit gives us an opportunity to invite our priests into the studio and to chat with them about matters of faith. With me, of course, is my co-host, Beatrice de Cruz.
Yeah, so we've just watched the Netflix movie called Mary. By now, I'm sure you would have heard or watched it yourself.
Yeah.
And so, taking some information from Lifestyle Asia, they describe this movie in this way. And they say, this Christmas, Netflix latest biblical narrative, Mary, transports us to a time before the advent of Christianity. And this is directed by Daniel John Caruso Jr., who is Catholic, and whose spiritual director for this movie was Bishop David O'Connell, the late auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles. Now, the movie was written by Timothy Michael Hayes, and this biblical epic retells the nativity story from a new angle. So this is narrated from Mary's point of view, and the story follows a young woman who, with a miraculous conception, flees from a merciless king, which is King Herod, who won't stop at anything to get to the baby.
Now, to join us today and to share his thoughts with us, we have Redemptorist Father Gerard Louis. Now, Father is from the Nulla Road Redemptorist community, and Father lectures at the Catholic Theological Institute of Singapore in theology, Christology, and, interestingly, Mariology. Okay, so Father, thank you so much for joining us,
thank you, Father.
especially in this particular season. Let's start off with, okay, so we watched the movie together.
Yes.
What did you personally take away from it?
Yeah, thanks for having me here, guys.
Most welcome.
And blessings of the season as well. I think after a year of teaching Mariology, this is the way that I
Yes. Time to give back, isn't it? Also.
end of the year on a Mariological note.
Yeah.
We just saw the movie. I had not seen it before. And I heard about it, but I didn't go to research too much into it. Yesterday, as I was speaking to a friend, she told me that there's been some bad reviews and even Catholics are not being encouraged to watch the movie.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what that was all about. So
Right.
I got home yesterday, put on a few podcasts on YouTube and got into what was going on. So we just watched the movie before we came to do this show.
Yes.
So what did I think of it? Well, I made a comment at the end of the movie that had both of y'all laughing away. And I said, at the end of this movie, my faith is neither shaken nor edified. I arrived here at 8:30 in the morning, and 2 hours later, after watching the movie, my faith is still the same.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So thank goodness for that.
Yeah. So it's a nice movie to watch, I think. If you're not into that kind of films, that's okay too. And I found it was just an attempt to share something about our faith in a new and modern way and in a modern context.
Right.
The movie is made very much in the new modern style.
Oh, yes.
The way the soundtrack is done, the
Yes.
filming is done, the portrayal of certain violent scenes, the way the characters come forward quite strongly, So they are not just doing a Christmas pageant like you would see in
Right.
the parish,
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Good
reading
point.
words directly lifted from the Bible.
Yeah.
There's a lot of license to try new and different things and manner in which it is portrayed. So I thought that was an interesting movie to watch. I'm not sure whether I'd watch it again or or use it in any context, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Any theological takeaway?
Well, I
It didn't
think-
shake your life, but or your faith, or didn't add. But any theological
and maybe that's
takeaway?
where we're going to get into our discussion,
Yeah.
on the movie and how that impacts people and where all this stuff comes from. As I was watching the movie, I could see very clearly this was a mixture of the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke, the Proto-Evangelium of James.
Right.
There were some aspects that were taken from the Jewish Talmud. that was present as well. And also just the modern sense of what would be the Semitic culture of that time. And certain aspects of that were introduced into the movie as well. So maybe I see these 5 elements in there as well, plus a little bit of artistic license in the portrayal of certain figures and characters of a supernatural nature that also came into the story.
Okay.
Okay, maybe Father, let's get a little bit into the second part of our conversation, right? We want to talk about the creative space and license that producers and directors have. So with regards to this movie, how do you think they use that to depict like certain, of the characters, like our Blessed Mother?
Yeah, and other characters as well.
Yeah.
So certainly the story follows more or less what we have in the Bible and what we have in the Catholic faith. Mary is a young girl. She's betrothed to Joseph. She's found to be with child. She gives birth to Jesus. There are other aspects of the story that also come in as well. Herod plays a very major role.
Yes.
Big role in the film. Almost a co-star.
Correct.
It's happening.
And played by Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins, the professional bad guy.
Absolutely.
So all these aspects of the story come into it as well. So that's just presented now, I think, in a new way. I think Mary was depicted well enough, and so was Joseph, trying to sort of see into their human side of things, and that's something to get into a discussion about as well. Their doubts, their confusions, and whatever else, and just their natural character and personality. And Joseph acts in a certain way in the film that we don't really know anything about him, and so the manner in which he is portrayed, that would very much be an artistic license.
Right.
Now, theologically, people have always been curious about the facts that are not given in the Bible, the details that are not given in the Bible.
Yeah.
So what we have, we all know the Christmas story, maybe what I would encourage the viewers to do is go and read through Matthew chapter 1 and 2 and Luke chapter 1 and 2.
Right.
And you will realize that the stories are presented in slightly different ways. Yeah. The wise men appear in Matthew, but not in Luke.
Right.
We have in Luke the Annunciation, the Visitation, the presentation in the temple.
Right.
Matthew's story is much quicker. The escape into Egypt, the massacre of the infants, that's all in Matthew. So we see a slightly more peaceful version, narrative in Luke.
In Luke.
We tend to put all of them together.
In our minds, right?
Yes, because it's all part of the Christmas story. We sing the carols, we Three Kings, Glory to God in the highest.
Yes.
So we think of it as all just one story. But Matthew and Luke have different narratives and presentations. So that, I think, is important to keep in mind. Now, still, there are so many details that are not in there.
Right.
And Christians have always had that curiosity. And at some point, apocryphal writings were produced.
Yes.
The most famous one of them being the Proto-Evangelium of James, that then filled in a lot of details that now we take for granted in our faith. That Mary's parents were Joachim and Anne, nowhere mentioned in the Bible.
Correct.
But we get that from the Proto-Evangelium of James, that Joseph was an old man and a widower who was then given to Mary, who had already been consecrated to virginity in her life.
That's right.
And so Joseph's role was simply to look after her. That he had children from a previous marriage and was now a widower. These now become the brothers and sisters of Jesus that are mentioned in the Synoptic Gospels. So all that story is in our mind, and we don't know where it came from. In my theology class, when I give students to read the Proto-Evangelium of James, they're like stunned. They say, "Oh, so this is where it all came from." So that's a big part of what we believe. And so maybe this movie is another form of apocryphal writing, another form of artistic apocryphal portrayal meant to help us to reflect on all those gaps of which we are
Yeah.
so curious. And I think as believers, as Christians, we have to approach that very carefully.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some people can be thrown off completely,
Yes.
Father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And like you correctly said, right? We have the gospel stories, but two different gospels written by different people telling maybe the same story but in a very different way. Some people have taken offense actually to this particular production of this movie Mary. So how do we find a balance then,
Yeah.
right? So that as Catholics, yes, we want to definitely defend, the faith and try and be as pure as possible when it comes to depicting the faith. But I think it's also very difficult for creative people to also portray, let's say, like an icon of Our Lady is an icon herself.
Yeah.
Even Joseph is also well known. And so how much license can we give? And how do we balance things off?
That's right. Yeah, that's important to know. The way that I would say is that, let's say I go to a mass and I preach on the Feast of Mary, Mother of God, or
Right.
on the Feast of Christmas, or the Holy Family, or the Epiphany.
Right.
Okay, I would give a certain presentation of the gospel drawn from the deposit of faith, now in interaction with people's daily lives. How do we take what we believe and hold in our faith and live that out in the real situation of our life? That would be what I would do in church.
Right.
Then I'll go and teach a theology class.
Ah.
Now that you can now bring in different aspects of tradition, be a little bit more critical
Right.
of the scripture text, in the sense that we are going more
Different
into
audience.
Yes, different audience. Yes, we're going more into the text. Where did this text come from? Where did it originate from? How is it we have two synoptic gospels that give different narratives? Why is it there's another synoptic gospel with no infancy narrative at all?
And yet they're called synoptic gospels
Yes, and
as
they're
well.
called synoptic. So Mark has no birth narrative at all. And then we have apocryphal writings that are not from the gospel tradition but come from another place that the church decided at some time not to include in the New Testament. And then we have the development of doctrines, the dogmas, and theology that came in the centuries later. And then in more recent times, the Second Vatican Council has helped us to relook at the place of Mary in the church for the contemporary age and all that. So you consider all of those things
Right.
as well when you're doing a theology class.
Yeah.
Now, filmmakers,
Yeah.
Yes.
are not in either of these categories.
absolutely.
So they are not preachers, they are not theologians.
Yeah.
They are here to make films, in some way to entertain, but also in some ways to educate, to put something out there. Some filmmakers would have just like Catholic radio and Catholic
yes.
media,
Yes.
Yeah.
We're using the means of modern communication to put across a message.
Yes.
And so these people, as filmmakers, I would say have a fair amount of license, I think, to put across something that they feel might be edifying to people, or
Helpful,
can be
maybe.
an entertaining movie.
Right.
But I think they also have to tread a fine line, because if they go and present aspects of faith that are very, very important and dear to people
Yes.
in their heart, and in some way come across offensive,
Yeah.
then they're going to lose their audience, and then the whole goal of the project will be lost.
Right.
At the same time, I think for us who are watching, is maybe we don't need to take offense at every small thing. You're not going to expect to go to a movie and people just reading out of the Bible,
Right.
and the characters of the movie just repeating the lines word for word, out of the New Testament.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we talked about the scene of the Annunciation.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the scene of the Annunciation.
Yeah.
So let's put this in theological point of view.
The blue robe of Gabriel was
yeah.
very interesting, I thought.
I don't know where the blue came from.
I don't know.
Yeah, actually.
No, I don't know. Was that supposed to be because even in the movie I was watching, and Mary never wore anything that was blue.
No, except for the veil, the blue veil that she wore before she went to the temple.
That
Except
was
for
the
that one.
only thing, but
Yeah.
she was wearing other stuff.
Yes, which was
That
interesting.
not blue.
Which was interesting. Yeah.
But some people said they found that depiction of Gabriel quite horrifying.
Yeah,
Quite
some
scary,
people thought
right?
it was scary.
Yeah.
I didn't really feel that at all. I thought, okay,
Yeah.
angels don't have any form.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
you have to find some artistic way of portraying them.
Right.
And he generally sticks to form. He appears at the times that we know that he might appear and puts across the general message that we know in our faith.
Correct.
Yeah.
But here's a thing, some people had thought that the Annunciation was not put across very, very well.
There were certain words that
Certain
may-
words, yeah.
Yes.
So
if I may, just before you share with us, Father, if I may just share with our viewers right now, because we are unable to put like parts of the film in this video.
Correct.
But I can read the script out for you. I typed it out a bit.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, so Mary was
thank you.
in prayer, right?
Yes.
And I guess the question most of us would ask was, did she doubt? Okay, because she started off by saying, I don't understand. You, I guess being God, you only speak to others about it. You got nothing to say to me. And then after that, when Angel Gabriel made his appearance, he says, don't be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. And her response was, what do you mean? Angel said, you are to become a mother. He will reign the house of David. And then she responds, but it's not possible. I cannot have a child. And he says, all things are possible with God. You will name him Jesus, and all the world will know him, Mary, for you are blessed among women. And she replies, let it be. Yeah. So that's how the script went.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
No problem.
So that's similar, but not exactly how Luke writes it in his gospel. Yeah. So I think what we have in the gospels are theological presentations. Yeah. The writer, the evangelist Luke, wants to put across a certain truth. Mary was a virgin. God had a plan for her in her whole life.
Right.
And so the angel Gabriel appears to her at a certain time in her life when she's betrothed to Joseph to break this news to her. He greets her, Hail Mary, which is not given
Yes.
in the movie. And then Gabriel then says to her, you are going to bear a child. So I would hold in mind the key points that are here. She's highly favored by God and has been chosen. She's going to have a child. The child will be a special child who will be the Messiah, who will be Christ, the Son of God. Mary then is unsure how all of this is going to happen, and she expresses that. And Gabriel simply tells her to continue to trust in God.
Yeah.
And at some point then, at the end of that conversation, Mary says, okay, I trust in you. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but I'll go along with it. I'll be faithful to what God is asking of me.
Right.
Yeah. So that Luke portrays that story, and these are the things that were said, may not necessarily mean that is all that was said. Or that the Mary's coming to peace at what was going on took place, in those X number of verses or lines. And it could have been a process in which she came to know and to understand that in her life. I'm personally happy to be able to live with that. Because at the end of the day, I know that Mary was a person who was open to the will of God in her life.
Right.
Whether that happened in 1 minute or 3 days, it still is. She is a person who is eminently faithful to the will of God in her life and was open to what God was asking her to do.
Right. Which brings me to my next question, actually, about, accepting God's will for us. I think there's a certain human experience for many of us where sometimes it's difficult to see God's will in our lives, and even difficult to see God's will in the events that are happening around us. And so I think when I watched the movie, it sort of gave me a perspective from Mary's side, and I thought it was quite human and quite natural to question certain things. It's not that we doubt or anything of that sort, but because we are finite and we don't have the whole picture. We only got pieces of the puzzle, in our finiteness. So when we turn to God, and I sort of felt I related to how Mary was feeling at that time, but some people may think that Mary disagreed with God and questioned the God's plan in this story, but somehow for me that didn't seem so. What was your takeaway, Father?
Yeah, I mean the idea of questioning, and in Luke's Gospel, this was something that I've always remembered in any kind of Bible class that I've ever attended. Yeah.
Right.
Zechariah questions. And so does Mary,
Yeah.
And then it seems as if Zechariah is punished for his doubt, but Mary is not. And then we are saying that no, she didn't actually doubt. She was just asking, how will this come about since I'm a virgin?
Yeah.
And yeah, one exegesis that I've read about it is that Zechariah was not really punished. Although the words of the angel seem to suggest that.
Yeah.
But his dumbness is given as a sign that something special is going to happen. Yeah. So I think in terms of doubt or confusion, at the end of it, what we have is characters in the Bible who all, at the end of the day, are faithful to God and carry out God's will in their life.
Right.
Zechariah does that, Mary does that, so does Elizabeth, so does Joseph.
Yeah.
They all are examples to us of people who did the will of God in their life.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, that is the example that is left to us in faith.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. I mean, in our own lives, I mean, like I said, even in everyday life, or for that matter, situations that you go through, you will question and ask and try and see the hand of God in a situation, even though you might find it hard to accept. I mean, for instance, the sickness of a loved one, or even if somebody loses their job and you're trying to understand, this person has got a family to look after, and how do you see God's hand in that? And for us to understand, it's not that we are fighting against God, but I think as I say in our smallness, we don't have the whole picture, and so I felt that this was the way that I think the producers tried to express them. I'm not trying to say that what they did was right or was wrong, but I just felt that I could relate to that, and it was a human condition. I thought in trying to see God's hand.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point about being able to relate to it, and I mean I don't think it's for us to say whether it's, as you said, it's right or wrong and things like that. But I guess the director was quite. I guess he fulfilled his objective, right? Because he did say here, in an interview, I guess he said, I wanted to inspire particularly younger viewers to say, wow, Mary could be my friend. And a lot of what she went through is contemporary and what's happening in the world today. Yeah. So I feel like he sort of fulfilled that objective because, as you said, a lot of what she went through, even temptation.
Yeah.
Right? Even temptation.
Yes.
Something that
was that scene, right?
Yeah. That many times, right? Like she was tempted in so many ways, but she remained faithful. As what Father also has emphasized.
Yeah, so Satan, whenever Satan appears,
Yeah.
Andre was very sharp to
Oh,
pick
yes.
up the fly
Flies.
buzzing around, and then next thing you know, the character of Satan is there.
Yeah.
And Satan is always the one who sows doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is God letting
You
this happen
suffer,
to
right?
you? Why is
Yeah.
God making you suffer? You know, and that's where the doubt creeps in.
Yes.
You know, so I thought that was an interesting way of presenting it. But that's nice, Beatrice, what you said about the director's sort of intention.
Yeah.
So perhaps we are watching it as people who are believers and strongly practicing.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be the majority of our listeners. But what about people who have very nominal
Yes.
relationship with the faith?
Yeah.
And so this is their entry into wanting to know a little bit more
Mm.
about the faith. That would be an interesting perspective, isn't it?
Correct.
And so now they would say, oh, where does this story come from? I've heard of this Bible. I'm here and there a few stories, some Christmas carols and all that.
Yeah.
Let me go and find out a little bit more. And I
Right.
think if it brings them in to understand more, to be more curious about the faith and to find out more, then maybe that is the purpose of these filmmakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they still have to appeal to the general audience also, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they want to fill the movie theaters that that around the world.
Yeah.
And so actually that's a good point, Father, to allow also for someone who has no idea of what Scripture is, and we take it from a different perspective of someone being introduced to these characters for the first time,
Yeah.
and then making them also palatable to this person who is finding out for the first time. But, something there,
Yeah.
and maybe I want to find out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the catechesis now will become important.
Yeah,
Where the church will have to guide such people who are searching in some way or other to realize that, okay, this is what we believe.
Yes.
You know, this is the Bible.
Mm.
This is the deposit of faith. This is the teaching.
Right.
And then we work from there. And this movie was a good introduction to bring you into the knowledge of the faith.
Right.
But that's not the deposit of faith.
Yes.
Yeah, here's the Bible. Here's the teaching of the church. You know that is what we base our faith on.
Right. And so the sisters and brothers. Yeah, sorry, Father. You guys.
No, go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wanted to ask Father something
Yeah,
actually,
sure.
like because practically you've also mentioned about how I mean that the movie is not the deposit of faith. I mean,
Yes.
the movie is not our Bible.
Yeah,
I think let's be
yeah.
clear about that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's say, Father, like someone who you know what has watched the movie, this movie sparked interest for them. I think I just want to ask like a very practical question on like, so how can someone begin to make their journey or start their journey of
Yeah.
faith? They want to search, look for answers and all that. And we earlier on also had a good conversation about like there will be a lot of things put out there on secular media on what this movie is about or what it's not about.
Mm-hmm.
So how can someone
And Catholic media as well.
exactly yeah, how can someone start like in a very practical way to look for answers? I mean, Catholic Answers is one, but not everything can be found on Catholic Answers.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the wonderful ways is to go and attend Mass during this this blessed season. I think the liturgy shares so much of the story. Now it's a bit late, Christmas is gone. But we will come back again next year. And there's still a few feast days to go.
Yes.
At the time of this recording, we've had Christmas and Holy Family with Mary Mother of God and the Epiphany
Yes.
still to come. So when we go to Mass, we are listening to the readings, we are listening to the story. And I love how Advent on the 17th of December takes another turn.
Yes.
And we reflect on all of those passages from Matthew 1 and 2 and Luke 1 and 2,
Yeah.
basically what was in the movie
Right.
and leading up to the birth of Jesus. And that word is broken for us, through the preaching, through the hymns that we sing and the celebration of the
Yeah.
liturgy. That really makes the whole story of Jesus' birth come alive and then invites us into worship, invites us into prayer and reflection on what's happening. So that'll be wonderful. Then, of course, they can go and talk to people who are who are in the faith, who live the faith, and then they can find out a little bit more. And then really, we also have to trust that the Holy Spirit is leading them and guiding them in their life,
Yes.
bringing them in contact with the right people,
Correct.
and making things happen. I think that's something that I see in the movie as well. Mary and Joseph don't always know what's going on.
That's
Correct.
true.
Correct.
That's
But
true.
they are just simply living faithfully to what they believe in God and trusting that all shall be well at the end of the day.
Correct.
And that's all there is in living the life of faith. It's not to know.
Yeah.
And not knowing is not doubting. Not knowing is not doubting.
Right.
It's just that I do not know.
Correct.
But in faith, I believe that God has a good end. Yeah. I don't know how the show is going to be received. Maybe it's a huge mistake for me to be here and talk about this.
No, but I like that point, Father. Not knowing
Yeah.
is
but-
not doubting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, also, and even in this discussion that we're having, again, it's for people to open themselves and for them to also discover on their own the message
Yeah.
that is for all of us, really, and then to eventually experience it on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you really, truly don't know, sisters and brothers, it doesn't mean that you are doubting.
That's right.
Yeah.
Amen.
For me, the final statement of Mary was what caught me, and it says, or what she said was, "Love will cost you dearly." And she will repeat the words of the prophet Simeon in the temple. It will pierce your heart. Love will pierce your heart. But in the end, love will save the world. That, for me, was, wow. That sort of, it sort of like summed up everything that, her role and the continuing role of what Jesus would be and become for us as well.
Yeah.
Love will save the world. And he is love incarnate, isn't it? So that, I mean, for me, big,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Well, one line that didn't appear in the film, but it's not something that Mary said, but it's what the evangelist Luke says, that Mary pondered all these things in her heart.
Yes.
And that came out in the gospel yesterday on the feast of
Yes.
the family
That's
at
right.
the end of Jesus finding in the temple.
Yeah.
So Mary's at the temple and this child is lost, and then the high priests are talking about him in this way, and she's wondering what is going on here. What's happening? Yeah, and so she just simply takes all this away,
Yeah.
and ponders it in her heart. And again, that's not doubt.
Mm.
Yeah, it pierces her soul.
Yes.
Mary and Joseph would have been very
Yeah.
flustered, I think, by
Worried,
losing
yeah.
their child, very
Correct.
worried. And so that's a normal reaction of any parent.
Absolutely.
Is your child safe? And it must have caused them a whole lot of trouble. Walk all the way back to Jerusalem
Correct.
and eventually find him. And didn't
Yeah.
you know that your father and mother must have been so worried about you? But in the end of the day, it's something that she takes away, and she doesn't know.
Yeah.
But she continues to ponder in her heart that somehow God must have a plan that's happening here, that I don't understand it now. Somehow, and she's aware that some of this could turn out to be painful.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that, Father.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think this has really, this opportunity for us to discuss this. It's the first time we're talking about movies
Yes.
on CatholicSG Radio.
Yeah.
So, I think this one was difficult for us to let go because Our Lady, plays such a huge role in the church. And for me, I'm very close to Our Lady, one of my first loves. But also because there was so much talk about it, and I before that was sent a poster that wasn't very positive. It was all negative actually. So I thought, so when I told Beats, I said, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we got the right man to come in and share with us. Thank you. Thank you so
an
much.
angel appeared in my dream to come on the show.
Was in a blue robe.
I thought to sum it up, to what would be my own personal take on it. For those who are Catholic, for those of people of faith, if you're a Christian of any kind, or even not a person of faith, watch the movie if you wish.
Yeah.
Go ahead and watch the movie if you wish. What it did for me certainly was to go even deeper into the biblical narratives, into the specific details of the two Gospels. It led me into the Talmud, which is the Jewish books and writings, their own writings apart from the Torah.
Yes.
And then also to look into a little bit more of the history of Judea, the Hasmonean dynasty, and the reigns of Herod, and what was happening historically at that time. I think the film gives us a sense of how people lived in those days, the political climate of that time, which was a violent, oppressive regime.
Right.
The people lived in that time, lived in fear, they lived in poverty, they could not trust their rulers.
Right.
Oftentimes they lived in fear of their lives. Many uprisings took place. These were crushed very violently. This was a way of life for those people at that time. The movie shows some of that, and so it comes across a little bit like an action movie, as you see here. So violent things do happen, and I think that could have been a fairly realistic portrayal of what life was like. We see Jesus and Mary living a very quiet, idyllic life in Galilee.
Yes.
And then Jesus really gets into trouble when he comes to Jerusalem. Although even in his home place, he's not really accepted by the people around him. But the real problems start, as he comes closer to the capital and to the temple. So I think that just led me to find out a little bit more and more. And then it helped me then also to be grounded and secure in my faith. This is what I believe. This is the deposit of the church. This is the catechism. This is the teaching. This is what I believe. And if the movie helps me to reflect a little bit more and to see a certain kind of picture that helps me to grow in my faith and understand things a little bit more, all the better.
All the better. Yeah.
Indeed.
What are your thoughts?
I only had one main thought when I saw the movie. So today was the second time that I watched it, and actually my relationship with our dearest mother, I think it's hard for me to sometimes understand the kind of struggles that she went through. I mean, because different time lah. Right? Different times and all that. And sometimes I feel like, our dearest mother wouldn't really understand the struggles that I go through as a woman now of this time. But watching the movie, I mean, the fact that it was from Mary's point of view, and the way that they portrayed the character also in some ways made me relate to her even more, actually. I'm actually really quite thankful for this movie as much as there are a lot of criticisms out there in terms of accuracy and all that, but not taking that whole thing into account on accuracy but just looking at it as a story, how Mary lived her life, the kind of temptations that she faced, the struggles that she faced also with Joseph. I thought that hey, these are everyday struggles. Till now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it in a way sparked for me a desire to I want to talk to Mother Mary a bit more, in this coming new year. Talk to her a little bit more hey, I think our dearest mother understands. More than I think she understands.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. Amen. And so I recommend to you the document Marialis Cultus, which is written by Paul VI and goes through quite a number of those real life experiences of the modern woman.
Wow. I got homework already.
Mary can shed light and reflection on what women experience today.
Thank you, Father.
So this is a brother's
Additional reading.
Absolutely. So we're going to end here, but hopefully this little chat that we've had, with Father Gerard has sort of sparked some curiosity. We are not going to really tell you to go and watch the movie. That's up to you completely.
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's up to you. But hopefully this discussion has given you also different perspectives. We've also shared our own personal perspectives. But hopefully, as I said, it opens your mind, your heart to something that could be tugging at you and at your soul. But as I said, we'll leave it to you. And at this time, we want to thank Father Gerard Louis. Father Gerard is a Redemptorist. He is with the Nulla Road Redemptorist Formation and Community, and Father lectures in the Catholic Theological Institute of Singapore. You want to look him up. He teaches
Christology,
he teaches theology, Christology, and Mariology. Okay?
Yes, and just a reminder, if you're listening to us right now, Off the Pulpit goes out every 2 weeks on Tuesday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Also, the encore is on our Archdiocese YouTube channel at 8 p.m. And you can catch this episode on our app as well at various timings like 5 p.m. On Fridays, 5 p.m. on Wednesdays and 2:10 p.m. on Thursdays.
That's right.
Yes.
So it just leaves us to say, take care, God bless and love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.